Okay, sorry about that, guys. All right, so it says the diagram below not drawn to scale. So before we do that, right? So I know that there's some persons who were not here from before. So if you notice in participants, you see Macros tutors and then you see answers. So because of how my screen is, I'm unable to respond to you guys over at Macros tutors. So you will speak to me, whether it is to ask you a question, answer a question, you'll do that over at answers. Right, everybody give me a yes in the chat. Let's just try that out to make sure everybody is here and ready. So give me a yes in the chat. Right, so not to everyone. So for example, you do something like that. If you got your answer wrong, then everybody would see and you'd probably feel bad, right? So don't put your answers to everyone, direct them to answers. Okay, I didn't get a yes from everyone, so I think there are some persons who probably still haven't figured it out. So hold on, guys, one moment. Let me make sure. Right, so you see, there's some of you still saying yes over at the other part. Right, guys, so follow my instructions. When you go to chat, right, it will say send to. Some of you have it on everyone. I'm saying click on it and you see the options come up. And you're going to send it to answers. Right, that's what I've named my other device. Awesome. So one person figured it out. What about the other person? Okay, for the rest of you, you can start to look at May 2011. We're gonna work it together, but just while I'm kind of setting, ensuring that these other persons are settled, you guys could maybe look at that question. Yeah, so just look at it, start to think. I mean, the persons who were here with me on Sunday, you'll probably have a better attempt. For the others, I will try to reteach as much as possible using the question, right? Okay, so it says the diagram below, not drawn to scale, shows a triangle PQR. Let me make it a little bigger. Right? Which represents the cross section of a roof, right? So they tell us that QS is perpendicular to PSR. So I want to talk about that quickly, right? QS is perpendicular to PSR. Right, means that when QS and PSR meet, they make a 90-degree angle. Right, so just to kind of take out that portion, so you have Q, you have S, you have P, and R. Right, and I'm just pointing out so that in general we know what it means. Right, so it means that when the two of those things meet, they make a right angle, and it's a right angle on both sides. Right, so that's what it means to be perpendicular. All right, so they then give us some length. So they tell us that PQ is 12.6, QR is 8.4, and then angle, so even that, angle Q, PR, so that symbol means angle, right? So they don't actually have to use the word angle, right? So that symbol means the angle, and the angle is always in the middle. All right, so this is saying the angle at P in between Q and R. Right, so apart from just working the questions, we're also trying to ensure that you guys are comfortable with the different symbols and how to read the questions. So I'm saying that when they put this here, right, you were supposed to know that it's the angle at P. Okay, so we have everything good to go now, and they said 3 significant figures. All right, so they asked us for the length of QS. All right, so for the first one, they asked us for the length of QS. Now, whenever we have our right angle triangles, remember I said we're either trying to use Pythagoras' theorem or the trig ratios. We use Pythag, right? If we know 2 sides. Right? But in this case, let's look over at the triangles on this side. So I know that side. All right, so it's only one side that I know because I don't know PS and I don't know QS. Then now for the other one, same thing. I know QR, but I don't know SR and I don't know QS. So therefore, we're not going to use Pythagoras' theorem. So again, guys, I'm trying to ensure that you can reason out the question for yourself to be sure what you should use, right? So since we don't know 2 sides of either of the triangles, right? I'm gonna come back to this page, but just for those persons who made notes, right? So since we don't know 2 sides of either triangle, we will not use Pythagoras' theorem. Right, which based on everything I taught you on Sunday, that only leaves you with the trig ratios. All right, therefore, we will use the trig ratios. And by that we mean SOHCAHTOA. So either the sine, the cos, or the tan. For the person who just asked me a question, give me a moment. All right, so let me just go back to this page so that person's can write off. Then I'll come back. So all questions so far, let me know. So what we've established, right? So we start the question. We need to find QS, which is in the middle. So I'm looking at the 2 right angle triangles. And I'm saying that whenever we have right angle triangles, you either use Pythagoras' theorem or the trig ratios. One of those 2 things. For Pythagoras' theorem, you can only use it if you know 2 sides. So based on this, for this triangle, you only know the 12.6. For this triangle, you only know the 8.4. So therefore, you can't use Pythagoras' theorem because you don't have enough information to use it. You are only allowed to use it if you know two sides. Yeah, no problem. I just realized that I answered you. Okay, we're going to this page. Right, so to use the trig ratios, right, we usually want to focus on, we have to have angles, right? An angle, but it's something relating to the angles and the sides. So I'm saying that technically you have two triangles. So you're probably going to ask me, Miss, how do I know I'm supposed to use the blue one and not the green one? Right? So I'm saying we wouldn't use the green one because we don't know the angle. Apart from the right angle, right? We don't know any of the angles in the green triangle. Right? So we will not use triangle QSR since we don't know any angle apart from the right angle. So to do the trig ratio, you can't use the right angle. So it has to be one out of the two. So what do I mean by that, guys? I don't know this and I don't know that. All right, so because I don't know either of those two, I am not going to use the green triangle. Again, guys, I'm trying to walk you through how can you in the exam know for yourself what you're supposed to do. So again, going back over that, right? We established that QS being perpendicular to PSR, right? Another part of what that was supposed to tell us, so if you notice, they only drew one of the right angles. But something you can know, right, is that because it has the right angle, because they're perpendicular, it actually makes a right angle on both sides. So that's actually something you can fill in. Because in the question, they only gave us one of them. Right? But I'm saying we also know that on the other side, it's a right angle. So that for me then establishes that, oh, I have two right angle triangles. So I said, okay, what's the next bit of information we were a little confused about? It was the little symbol to the left, does not mean greater than, right? It means angle QPR, which is saying the angle at P, right, which is this, right, which is in between Q and R. So they asked us to define the length of QS. As I said, we're thinking, okay, we have right angle triangles. I'm either using Pythagoras' theorem or the ratios. I can only use Pythagoras' theorem if I know two sides. For both of them, we only know one side. So we rule out Pythagoras' theorem. Right? That therefore only leaves our trig ratios. Right, so for those who weren't here before, you might have a little problem with the trig ratios until I explain it. So I'll try to re-explain for you so that you can, I mean, you'll have the video, but some of you literally just got signed up a couple minutes before. So, right, so I'm zoning in on this one. Since this has the 15, right, this is 12.6. Right, so for all those who were here, you need to label which one is the hypotenuse, the opposite, and the adjacent. right? So for those persons who weren't here, as revision, right? So if you notice in the ratios, so I have SOHCAHTOA, right? So the O stands for the opposite side. The A stands for the adjacent side, right? And the H stands for the hypotenuse. Right? So what you use depends on what sides you have. So how do you know the sides? All right, so let us say the angle is here. Right, the hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. Right, so that's a general rule. You have hypotenuse. Some persons know it as a slant, but I find that students still mess it up. Right, and then that if you label the hypotenuse first, you'll only have two sides left. The one closest is the adjacent, the one across is the opposite. Right, so similarly up here, across from the right angle, that's my hypotenuse. So guys, just pay attention and then right after. Right, and then that leaves two sides. The one closest is the adjacent, the one across is the opposite. So whenever you have these things, the first thing you want to do, right, is to label the opposite, adjacent, and the hypotenuse. Then step 2, you're going to decide what tool to use. Where I have, oh yeah, this should be P. Sorry about that. Thank you. Right, so the two sides to use, you're always going to use obviously the side that you know, and then they ask us to find QS. Right, so usually we want to use what we know and what we're trying to find. Right, can only be two, very important. So you decide what two. So a triangle has 3 sides. So that means at all times you will only use 2 of the sides. I'm saying the 12.6, that has some information, so I'm going to use that. That leaves me with PS and QS, but since they asked me to find QS, I'm gonna go with QS. So for those persons who weren't here, so the S, so when you have SOHCAHTOA, right, the S is saying that sine X is the opposite over the hypotenuse, and cos X is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, the tan X, right? So you use the letters to tell you. So if you notice, this has SOH. So that's why we have opposite and hypotenuse. So it's like a little acronym to help you remember it. Right, but those persons who may feel a little lost, just go ahead and follow. I think you may have to watch the video from Sunday because that's where we did some of the foundation work. Right, that's if you for sure didn't learn it at all at school, or maybe just wasn't paying attention at the time, or maybe it was online, whatever it may have been that hindered you from remembering it. Don't worry, when class is over, or another day, just sit down and try to watch the first video. So all the people who were here from Sunday, how come I only see like 2 persons send me in an answer? Ah, okay. That's what I'm wondering. Right, so to use opposite and hypotenuse means we're going to use sine. All right, so we're gonna have that sine 15 is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. So sine 15, so what's the opposite? The opposite is QS, and the hypotenuse is 12.6. So at this point now, you're going to solve for QS. So the 12, which is divided, when you take it across, so again, those persons who were not here, maybe new, not so good at solving equations, I can definitely share some material with you to help you with that. Because at this point now where it says solve for QS, that's not a trig question, that's just an algebra question, right? But I do know that most students struggle with that. So if that's an issue for you, then we can always talk about it. Right, so you have to put it in your calculators and you're going to get 3.26. So to put this in your calculator, guys, so everybody, please do not use your phone calculator, do not use the iPad, laptop, any type of device calculator. Start to practice to use the calculator you're going to bring into the exam. So there's a button on your calculator, you see SIN, right? So you simply type 12.6, you put the multiplication sign, press the SIN, and then put 15. Right, and in fact, what you should be seeing is 3.26119968. Okay, good job. Again, I do know that the persons who are just joining today might feel a little uncomfortable. So you have to help me to help you. So whatever part feels a bit blurry, just let me know and I will try to fill in those gaps. I'm gonna go back from the first page. Yeah, so I'll come to, I see one question coming shortly. So we already spoke about the perpendicular. Then we said, okay, we're going to use QS. We're going to use triangle QPS, I should say. Right, so somebody's asking me, where did the sine 15 come from? So for that person, were you okay with how I labeled this triangle? Meaning, are you seeing how I put in the opposite, the hypotenuse and the adjacent? Are you seeing that? Okay, then are you seeing that I circle the hypotenuse because I know it, and I circle the opposite because that's what I'm looking for? So are you okay with the fact that I chose those two sides? No, they didn't give it to us. So technically we don't know what the adjacent is. So that's why I didn't use it, because I wouldn't know what it is. So hence that's why I'm using the hypotenuse and the opposite. Because the adjacent would have helped me because I don't know it. So since I only get to choose two, I for sure don't know QS because that's what I'm solving for. So I'm not gonna use PS because then I wouldn't know QS and I wouldn't know PS. That's leaving me nowhere. Yeah, we don't know the opposite, but we're gonna solve for it. So I'm saying, think about it. It's a triangle. You have 3 sides and you only get to choose 2. QS has to be one of them because that's what the question said. It said solve for QS. So QS has to be one of them because that's what you're solving for. So by default, right, QS had to be one of the options. Agree that QS, the opposite, has to be in it? Yeah, the 15 came from the angle, right? Right, as I said, we use the... Oh, okay, yeah, the 15 came from the angle. So it's always, so let's put that as another note, right? So it's always sine x, cos x, tan x, right? So it's always the sine of the angle, the cos of the angle, or the tan of the angle. So the angle always follows that labeling. Okay, I just realized what was giving you the problem. Again, guys, I can't see if anybody is talking over at Macquiz Tutors. So if you are directing any questions there, I wouldn't be able to see them. I don't want to ignore anyone, so please ensure that you're directing your questions to answers. So hence I'm saying sine 15, right? So remember, it's always the angle, right? Is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So I put in the opposite for the hypotenuse and we solve for QS. Something very important I want to point out, right? The question asks the 3 significant figures. So just as a little revision, for significant figures, right? Start counting at the first number that is not 0. All right, so this would be 1, 2, 3. Then you look to the right. If it was 5 or more, you would round up. But since it is not, you just leave it as 3.26. So for significant figures, you start counting at the first number you see that is not 0. And I'm going to contrast that with what if they had said 3 decimal places. For those persons who are finished, you can go ahead and try to find angle RQS, right? Which means the angle at Q that is between R and S. So it's on the green line, it would be this angle that I have up in the top. Right, and remember, basically now we know that this part is 3.26. So use that to help you for those persons who are here on Sunday. So let's just talk about decimal places versus significant figures. All right, so for significant figures, we start counting at the first number that is not 0. Right, so for example, the same 3.26114 to 3 significant figures. You count 1, 2, 3. You look to the right. If it's not 5 or more, then you leave it. All right, for the person who just asked a question, coming to you shortly. All right, however, suppose it was 0.0. All right, to the same three significant figures. I'm saying that for significant figures, you have to start counting at the first number that is not 0. So then you look to the right, it is 5 or more, so we round up. So this would be 0.0346. In contrast, decimal places, you start counting at the first number after the decimal point. Okay, I see the answers coming in. Just give me a moment, guys. All right, so let's use that same 3.26114. Right, I'm saying that if it was decimal places, you would start counting at the 2. So you'd go 1, 2, 3, and then you draw the line. And then to the right, there's no rounding. So this would be, so let's put, so 3 decimal places would be 3.261. If I had 0.034551, the 3 decimal places, doesn't matter if it's a 0, I start counting right after the decimal place. Then you look to the right, it's 5 or more, so we round up. So this would be 0.035, right? So that was just a mini lesson on decimal places and significant figures. As I already said, whenever we have these things, we always want to see what other information we can bring out. So if there are any questions about the decimal places and the significant figures, let me know now. The first digit. Well, it depends. That's what I'm saying. If it's the decimal, if they're asking you to round to decimal places, you start counting at the first number after the decimal point, the first digit after the decimal point. However, if it's significant figures, you're counting the first number you see that is not 0. Yeah, no problem. Okay, I see a few persons were able to get the answer. If anybody else is taking down their notes, you can go ahead and do so. We're gonna focus. All right, on this triangle. Okay, if anybody's still writing, just let me know and then I'll go back because I'm not really sure of the pace of how everybody's writing. I don't really want to hold up everybody, but if you are still writing, let me know and I will go back for you. All right, so we have QSR. All right, we know that this is 3.26, and we know that this is 8.4. So somebody asked me, how did I know the angle is up there, right? I mean, the person eventually figured it out. But guys, this is why the little things I say matter, right? So remember, I earlier said that this symbol, we know is the angle, and it's the angle. Did I put the right one? Sorry, it's RQS. Right, so they're really asking us for the angle that is at Q, right? So that's for sure, you know, the angle has to be at the middle letter. And you can double check it to say, oh, and then that is in between the S and the R. So more important than even doing the questions, we want to be able to identify what questions are asking us, right? So it is the angle Q in between R and S. Okay, so for those persons who weren't here, this is your opportunity to try. So label which side is the opposite, which side is the adjacent, which side is the hypotenuse. Right, so you actually try to put it in. Which side you think is the hypotenuse, the opposite adjacent? And then you choose two sides. This one you wouldn't know how to do the angle because you weren't here on Sunday. For those who were here, you should be able to. All right, so across from the right angle, this is the hypotenuse. Then that leaves two sides. So the one across is the opposite, the one close is the adjacent. All right, then we can only choose two sides. So if I know, after the person who has your hand up, go ahead, you can either type it, but if you would prefer to unmute, you can go ahead.
Hello, good night. I was wondering why isn't the opposite where the 3.26 is, because isn't that opposing the angle?
No, so when you think about opposite, right? As I said, the best way to think about it is that opposite when you think about somebody being opposite to you, right? It's like they're across from you, they're on the other side. Whereas the word adjacent actually means next to or beside. So if you had to decide, this one, look at it, this one, close, this one, far, on the other side, right? So it's like, let's draw you and your friend, right? So let's say you're here, your friend, so this is you, this is your friend, right? You want to think of it as this friend is adjacent because that person is right beside you, all right? Whereas I said this person is across the road, so you guys are saying hi to that friend across the road, right? This person would be on the opposite side of the road. Yeah, so you and your friend is at the other side. So if your friend is right next to you, your friend is adjacent. Whereas the friend across, opposite. Yeah, so I hope that helps. Okay, so based on that, right, I would want to go ahead, I would use the hypotenuse and the adjacent since I have information, because I only get to use two sides, right? So in this case, I'm going to use the adjacent and the hypotenuse since I know information about them. I'm going to call the angle up here X. Right, I'm going to do it on the next page, but essentially what I'm going to have is that cos X is equal to the adjacent. So let me put it back over here in case anybody is not familiar with it yet. All right, so again, sin X is when you have the opposite and the hypotenuse. Cos X is when you have the adjacent and the hypotenuse. And tan is for when you have the opposite and the adjacent. Right, so yes, we would use cos in this case, right, which would be 3.26 over 8.4. So in this case, now I have to leave the angle as X. The last time we used the angle as 15, but that's because we knew it was 15. Now we don't know the angle, so I'm just calling the angle X since that's what I'm solving for. All right, so allowing persons to write off. So for those persons who were here on Sunday, remember that whenever you're finding the angle, you have to use the inverse function. All right, so just bringing it over this side. So again, guys, if I ever turn the page and you're not ready yet, just let me know and I will turn it back. Okay, so on Sunday, I basically told you how to solve for X, right? So to get rid of the cos beside it, what you do is you cos inverse the other side, right? So the opposite of cos is to use the cos inverse. Right, so those persons who weren't here to put this in your calculator, I mean, if you have a Casio, it goes exactly like this. If you do not have a Casio, then might be something similar, right? But for the Casio people, you're gonna press shift, then you're going to press cos. You should see, so when you do this, you should see this pop up on the screen, right? Then you're going to put bracket 3.26 divided by 8.4. Again, guys, please use your calculators from now. Even today, I had to help somebody with their calculator because their calculator was in the wrong mode, right? So you doing these things from now helps me to help you so that I can tell you if something on your calculator needs to be fixed or changed or anything like that. All right, so we'll do the cos inverse of 3.26 divided by 8.4. Yeah, and we should be getting, so I'm gonna put the full thing and then we'll do the rounding. So you should be getting 67.16396864. That's what you should be seeing. So everybody, please try to put it in the calculator. Take my advice. Is your hand still up or was it from before? If your hand is up again, you can unmute, but I'm not sure if you just didn't lower it. But if you want to go ahead, you can. Oh, okay. Right, and then based on what I just said about significant figures, I'm coming, right? So it said what? 3 significant figures. So we're gonna start counting from the first number that is not 0. So we go 1, 2, 3. You draw the line. Look to the right. If it is 5 or more, you round up. So to get the full marks for this question, you would have to say 67.2. Anything else? You get most of the marks, but not all the marks. Somebody's asking if they should always round off their final answer. Not necessarily, meaning, so normally if they don't say, then we usually do 2 or 3 decimal places. But if they indicate, you definitely have to do what they have asked you to do. Right? So just watch out. All right, guys, and for those persons who weren't here, so, all right, I'm going to use cos inverse, sine inverse, right? These are called inverse functions. So you don't, like, we wouldn't say cos to the -1. That's not how we read it, right? So it's called the inverse trig function, right? Because we want you to get used to the language so that if you are somewhere and you hear somebody saying it, you're not wondering what they're talking about, right? So we don't say cos to the -1, sine to the -1. We say cos inverse, sine inverse, tan inverse. Right? Imagine somebody coming to Jamaica and if they don't use certain slangs, it's like you already know that they're not a Jamaican, right? So it's the same thing. If you go into a room and you say, yes, it is cos to the -1, 3.26 divided by 8.4. It's like immediately the persons are saying, this is not a real math person, you know. And we don't want that. So let's practice the language, guys. Okay, to make sure everybody's not sleeping, scrolling, staring outside, doing all sorts of things they're not supposed to do. Can I get a guess in the chat from everyone? So some of you have been messaging, engaging, so I know you guys are awake, but what about everybody else? Everybody else who isn't asking any questions, isn't answering, can I get a yes? Are you with me? You may not be comfortable just yet, but are you at least with me? Are you trying? Are you present? Guys, stay with me, stay with me. We have 30 more minutes. Come on, you can do it. I haven't gotten a yes from everybody. Where are the others? Guys, trust me, focus. Don't be scrolling TikTok. Don't be looking at other stuff. Just focus for the hour and a half. You get your study time and you get it over with. Okay, we're gonna do the last part. So this is something new for everybody to know, right? So the last part now, they have asked for the area, all right, the area, and they don't say triangle, they just put the little triangle symbol, right? Of triangle PQR, which means the big triangle. All right, so this means triangle, so they don't actually have to say it. And this is the big one. So that's, let's use the red. All right, so they want big triangle. Now I'm gonna do it the easiest way, but I just want some persons to know that if you wanted to find the area of the two right angle triangles and then sum it together, that will be perfectly fine, right? So you can maybe do that outside of class if that's something you wanted to do, right? So you find area of, let's put it like this. All right, so the area of triangle PQS plus the area of triangle QSR, right? And since right angled triangles, the area would be a half base times height. All right, so I'm just walking you through it so that you have it, but this is not the way I'm going to do it because this wouldn't have been the most efficient way. All right, so for area of triangle PQS, right, the base is PS and the height is 3.26. So you would have to go ahead and find PS, right? So that's what I was saying. This one has a lot more work. And then for the area of triangle QSR, it'll be a half the base times the height. So same thing. So with option 1, you would have to find PS, you'd have to find SR, and then work out everything. All right, so not impossible, but definitely longer than what I'm about to show you. So take this off as option 1, and then I'm gonna go through option 2. All right, and your hint to find PS and SR, you would have to use the trig ratios. All right, so if you're going that route, my hint to you is to use the trig ratio. So basically repeating the process of what we just did, but just for the other side. All right, guys, so take it down. All right, so a lot of things came out of this question in terms of just learning. If anybody's still writing, let me know. Then for option 2, right, I would find the area of the non-right angled triangle. So I would just go straight for PQR, right? And that formula is a half AB sine C, where C is the angle and A and B, right, are the sides making the angle. And again, guys, I have videos upon videos teaching these things. So, I mean, if you're going into a marathon with no prior knowledge, sometimes it can feel a bit overburdening because you haven't really learned the foundation, right? So it's really best you probably go through the folder and try to get it in. All right, so what I would do is, since I know these two sides of the big triangle, right? So this is exactly what we're talking about. So I have this side and I have that side, and the angle would be right there. All right, so this would be my A, this would be my B, and this would be C in the formula. So again, guys, this is just in general, because definitely when it comes on to Sunday's class and we start to get into sine rule, cosine rule, this is something that's always tested, right? Especially when you get those type of questions. I'm saying you're learning how to find the area of a non-right angle triangle. And I'm saying you need two of the sides and the angle in between that side. So based on what we have right now, the area is a half A times B times C, but we can actually find that angle. All right, so I'm almost there, but I need to go ahead and find that angle first. But before I go ahead to find C, so focusing on option 2. This is a formula. I need to go and check if it's on the formula sheet. All right, but I'm saying this is a formula to know. All right, so if you didn't know before now, ensure you're taking notes so that you have this down somewhere. All right, so let me erase this for a little bit. So if we can remember, the angle that we found up here, we just found it to be what? 67.2. Right? But what I want is this full angle here. Right? So I want the full angle up the top. I know part of it is 67.2, but I need to know the other part. So I need to find that part. So what we should be thinking about, guys, is that angles in a triangle sum to 180. So when you add the 15 with the 90, with whatever this is, you should get 180. All right, so let's look at consider triangle PQS. All right, angles in a triangle sum to 180 degrees. So 180 degrees should be 15 right, plus the 90 plus what we're looking for. All right, so this is 105 plus x. All right, so you want to subtract. All right, so since it's added, when we take it across, we do the opposite, which is to subtract. All right, so this part is actually 75. So the total, or C rather, right? So C is going to be the 75 plus the 67.2, right, guys? If you notice, it's 3 marks, all right? You have to work for it. However, if this is not a strong area for you, I would strongly suggest probably, thing is, trig is a profile on the thing, so you don't want to leave it out, right? So you don't want to leave it out, but you also, because the trig questions can kind of take some time, you don't want it to throw you off, and then let's say you aren't confident with it, it messes up the rest of the exam. So try to get in a lot of the others, and then you come to trig, but you still, especially those who want to get a 1, definitely have to do something with the trig. Right, so we're not finished with the question, but we are almost finished. Somebody said, Miss, where did the other 90? What do you mean? What 90? We don't need it. Not sure what you're asking. Ask that another way. Yeah, I know 90 degrees, but what are you asking about it? Meaning, yeah, I'm gonna go back. All right, so this is gonna be a half times 12.6 times 8.4 sine 142.2. So for the rest of you, when you put that in your calculator, you should be getting 32.4. Should be meters. All right, so I'm gonna allow persons to check. If you need me to go back to whichever page, let me know. Yeah, you can turn on the mic. So guys, overall, yes, ask me before turning on the mic because I don't want it to be distracting. But whenever, if it's hard to like type a question, you are more than welcome to unmute. I just know that sometimes persons have noisy backgrounds and stuff, so we try to minimize distractions. All right.
All right, Miss. Good night. I was asking about the other side, where you said that the 90 degrees is also assumed.
Right over here.
Yes, Miss. What happened to that? Because I already know that Q up there, so I already need the 180.
Well, it's still there. It's just that I wouldn't really need it because what am I looking for? Remember, I'm looking for this portion up the top.
Yes,
so I technically didn't need the triangle on the right side anymore. I was just focusing on, okay, if I need these two pieces, I already know this portion because we had worked that out from part 2. So what's really missing is the left portion.
Miss, remember the 75 came in?
Yeah, so the 75, we had to solve for it. So that's when I went over here and I was saying that angles in a triangle. So that's why I was focusing on look in green. So that's why I said, oh, well, let's look at angles in a triangle here. Hold on. All right, so let's say we even ignore this. Right, and I ask you to find the angle up there. If you know the two other angles in the triangle, right? Because we know that the 90-degree symbol, that means that this is 90. We already know the one in the corner is 15. So since all of them must sum to 180, I can solve for it. So that's how I found that it has to be 75. Well, let me know if you're seeing it.
You said 90 degrees, and then that is 15 degrees. And how you got
right,
the
so which, yeah, so I'm saying that 180 would be equal to all of them added together. Agree?
Oh, yes, miss.
Right. And then I'm just solving basically for x. Yeah, so you are going to subtract. So I mean, I add these first, but if you wanted to just subtract, meaning to say 180 minus 15 minus 90, That's also okay.
Oh, and then
So
you got
what?
105 and you subtracted it from
Yeah, but
180.
right. But if you wanted to carry them over first, that's okay as well.
Oh, all right.
Okay, no problem. The 67.2 came from part 2 of the question. Because remember, it was angle RQS, so it came from the top part. Remember, you were asking me, oh, you know, it's the angle at the top, so that's what we found in part 2. Okay, then I'm not considering, if you're asking me where's the 90 degree on this, I don't want any 90 degree. What I want is the two sides and the angle at the top. So what I did over here, all of this was just to help me find the full thing that I have here, which is the 67.2 plus the 75 that we found. All right, guys. So again, if we're having problems, probably means that it's a little bit deeper than just the question here. So again, I have lots and lots of videos. So remember, we still have to be mindful because it's a group. So I would love to keep going over for you guys. But I would say try to watch the videos first, rewatch this. If you're still having a problem, then message. Right? Because I also don't want you to just not be answered. So if you try it on your own and you try to use the resources and you're still not okay, then you reach out to me. All right. Okay, if anybody needed any of the pages, let me know. We're gonna go to May 2019. Right, so I kind of want to talk about angles of elevation and depression today. So that question was a big question, guys. That one was a big one, but worth it because of certain things that would have come out of it. All right. Okay, not sure if anybody needs any other pages. I'm gonna switch in a moment. Okay, hopefully everybody is ready for me. Okay, so it says the diagram not drawn to scale shows two ships R and S. All right, so we're gonna just imagine that we have two ships out here anchored on a lake of calm water, right? So this is the water. It says FT is a vertical tower. All right, and it says FSR is a straight line such that RS is 150 meters. It says the angles of elevation of T, the top of the tower, from R and S are 22 and 40 respectively. So kind of just want to do a little teaching. All right, so for angles of elevation and depression. All right, so your angles of elevation always drawn from the horizontal up. So what do I mean by that? All right, so I'm calling the flat part the horizontal. All right, and I'm saying basically, first of all, we know this has to be the right angle. That therefore leaves us with two angles. Yeah, no problem. I haven't really said much, just kind of doing a little teaching on angles of elevation and depression. So I was saying that the angle of elevation, how do you identify what it is? Because there are some questions that they ask you to put it in, right? So they were nice enough to tell you that it's down here, but what if they didn't tell you? Right? That leads you to think it's either the one at the bottom or the one at the top. Right? The one at the top, the one below. Now I'm saying that it's always from the horizontal up. So this is how I would know that that is the angle of elevation. Or if the triangle is drawn like this, one moment. Okay, it's back. Right? So I'm saying that if you're keeping in mind that what I'm saying is that it's always from the horizontal, right? Then you would never draw it up the top because the horizontal is not up the top. So if they had asked you to put it in, you would have known that it would be at the bottom. Right? Similarly, the angles of depression, right, are always drawn from the horizontal down. Right, so think elevation, that sounds happy, that sounds like we're going up. Depression, that sounds sad, that sounds bad, we're going down. Right, so you can use that to kind of like guide you. All right, we know this is, so for these questions, it will always be for the angle of elevation, one of the two triangles at the top. For the angle of depression, one of the two triangles on the bottom. Right, again, this leaves us with two, but we always draw it from the horizontal down. From the horizontal down. Right, so just ensure that you know how to identify your angle of elevation versus your angle of depression. Okay, so take that down. I know that might be new information for some persons. Okay, so I do want to point out something. So it says the angles of elevation of T from R and S are 22 and 40 respectively. All right, so we kind of just want to talk about some stuff. So whatever comes after the from, that's where the angle is, right? So from means focus point. Right, so in this case, it means the angle is at the R and S. And I'm saying this, guys, because there are other questions where you have to fill it in. So I need you to know when they're using this language, what's happening. Right, so I'm saying in this case, this is why the angle is at the S and at the R. Well, I mean, you guys already should have known because I said angle of elevation is from the horizontal, but some students are gonna put the 22 here and the 40 here. We see it all the time, right? So don't want you to make that mistake. Then it says respectively, right? So that in questions generally means following the order from before, right? So since we said R and S, it means that the 22 is for the R and the 40 is for the S. Right, so again, guys, this is exam tips, learning how to read our questions, very, very important. Okay, so this one was a little bit difficult as well, but the point, I'm gonna give you some hints for those persons who are already finished. So for step one, right, find TSR using angles on a straight line. Right, and then step two, you'll find what they want, which is angle RTS, angles in a triangle sum to 180 degrees. So I'm coming to you, but I just want to give persons. So guys, anybody who didn't get anything before, now is your time to say so that I can go back to a previous page. I can explain whatever it is. Hi guys, so I mean, you will hear me ask, you have heard me answer persons from the start of class. I'm not in the business of embarrassing students. So if you notice, I don't call anybody's name. I don't embarrass anybody. So there's no reason for you to be nervous to ask me. Please do not leave these marathon sessions not being able to complete the questions, right? This is why you're here, so ask your questions. And no question is a bad question. So for those persons who didn't know, if you're even asking me why 2 + 2 is 4, I'm not going to tell you that you should have known that already or anything like that. If you don't know, you just don't know. Okay, so as I said, we're going to, they asked us to find angle RTS. What does that mean? It means the angle at T in between R and S, right? So they're really asking us for that one up there. So we're looking and we're saying, well, not too sure what, but step one, right? So using angles on a straight line sum to 180 degrees, right? So I have the straight line and you have it going up, right? This side is 40. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find this angle first. Because then I have 2 out of the 3 angles in the triangle. So that's why I'm going that route. So I say, okay, let me go with this first. All right, so 180 degrees would be 40 plus TSR. So 180 minus 40 is TSR. So TSR is 140. All right, so what we're saying is that this is 140. So then for step 2, right, which is the same thing we were just doing for the person who had asked me the question earlier, right? Angles in a triangle sum to 180 degrees. So 180 degrees is going to be the 140 plus the 22 plus the RTS. So if you want to bring them over first, yeah, this is the so X, if you want to call it X or if you want to call it TSR, whichever one. Right, let me put it in blue since I had it in blue over there. Does that help for the person who asks? So I mean, I had put X, but maybe you can put just TSR instead. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so I can already tell you that the angle is going to be 18. All right, so you can either add them together first or you can just take them across, whichever you prefer. All right, point is you should get 18. All right, so these 2 parts we're gonna have to do on Sunday because you would have to learn about the sine rule. So I'll teach you that. So that's what we're gonna do on Sunday, which is the new part. Let me see the next question. And okay, no, that's going to need it as well. yeah, I think I'll just wait so that we don't end up getting anybody lost, because it's going to be more information, and I feel like today was already a lot of information. So what we're really focusing on for Sunday, guys, I'm going to introduce you to something called the sine rule, the cosine rule. We've already done the area of non-right angle triangles, so really what's left for you to do in trig, apart from bearings, is for you to learn the sine and the cosine rules. All right, so if there's anybody that already kind of knows these stuff and you want to move ahead, as I said, there are videos in the folder that you'll be able to go through lots and lots of past papers and other stuff, so you can make use of those materials if you don't necessarily want to come to the classes on trig, maybe because you're already comfortable with it. So it's just up to you and figuring out what works. All right, guys, so I know today was heavy, so I'm going to send out the recording, if not tonight, in the morning, and then you'll have it. And you guys just revise again, make use of the materials and the videos in the folders. Right? I won't have the time to teach you guys in full all of these topics, right? But I have allowed for you to have access to the resources. So all you need to do is just do your part. So sometimes you may have free time on a particular day when there's no class. Just skim through the videos and see if you can learn anything. All right. Once you finish writing, you are free to go. Bye, everyone. I'll see you on Sunday.